There's a curse hanging over the Super Mario Bros. Movie that Nintendo are currently making, and that curse has its origins in the past.
Yes, indeed. Did you know there was another Mario Bros. Movie with the same or very similar title?
That's right, the original Super Mario Bros. Movie, of course, was made back in the early 90s. Now just imagine, it's the early 90s, you're Nintendo, you're looking to make a movie about your blockbuster character, Mario, who's taken the world by storm. What do? Well, of course, you go to people who know how to make movies. So in the early 90s, they approached a husband and wife team who'd previously made characters like Max Headroom, the 80s icon, and the thriller film DOA.
Yes, indeed, and they recruited some rather interesting actors, such as Bob Hoskins as Mario, who of course played in the Long Good Friday and other such popular films, etc.
That's right, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Hook, etc. and so forth. In the role of Luigi, they picked John Leguizamo, who'd appeared in Die Hard 2, Samantha Mathis as Daisy, Dennis Hopper as Bowser, etc. and so forth. So they had quite the star-studded cast back then, just like they do now, of course, with the new Mario Brothers movie. They've got Chris Pratt as Mario, Jack Black as Bowser, etc. and so forth. So picking all the names. So really doing the same approach there, which is what you do if you were making a film. Now, of course, back then in the early 90s, they decided to go the live action route. This was the first of many mistakes. There was lots of confusion during filming. They didn't even know if this film was going to be for kids or for adults.
Well, yes, indeed. You see, they had all the ingredients there, but of course, when it came down to it, it started to go rather nastily wrong.
Rather wrong. For example, to give you an idea of how bad things were going, at one point they had a stripper scene in the film, which was cut. They didn't want to give Mario or Luigi their famous costumes because they were considered silly. Now just imagine that, Mario and Luigi with no costumes on. Come on, that's ridiculous.
Yes, they seemed to be a bit confused there. Of course, they ended up with costumes on.
Yes.
Not sure how that worked, but
they eventually relented and said, well, I suppose we'll have to give them costumes then, just about. They were completely missing the point of Mario.
Yes, indeed, despite the fact, of course, they poured rather a large amount of money, considering it was back then. I think it's $45 million to make this film.
$45 million. Back then, that was a huge sum of money. Now, the movie itself back then was quite gritty compared to the Mario games. It wasn't happy-go-lucky or anything. It was based in a sort of alternate reality known as Dino Hatton, along with the real-world New York, and it featured all kinds of weird themes and designs, with some characters like King Koopa looking especially strange. Now, the reception, as you can imagine, back in the early 90s to the original Mario film was very negative. It appeared on several lists of the worst movies of all time, and it's become a bit of a cult classic as a result.
And actors such as Bob Hoskins said of the film, it's probably it is the worst film he'd ever played in.
Yes, I know. It really left a bad taste in the mouth of the actors. Indeed, Bob didn't even know he was making a video game movie during filming until his son told him who Mario was.
Yes, indeed.
It's ridiculous.
This character you're playing is actually Mario, and here he is. Oh,
Who's
is he really?
Mario?
Right,
Exactly.
Okay, yes. But also, and of course, now Reggie, the former Nintendo president, of course, he said at the time the movie left a really bad taste in the mouth of our developers, and he'd heard horror stories about the production from Nintendo staff.
Absolutely, that's right. I mean, the producer of the film said Nintendo were apparently very polite about it. They didn't phone up to complain or anything, but behind the scenes, I think they were cringing in the real meaning of that word, old chap. To give you an idea of how bad things were, the filming went on so long that Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo started taking shots of scotch just to make it through each day.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
it was that bad.
And of course, also, they were doing awful things. I mean, at one point, one of the chaps, I understand, was drunk while driving a van on set.
John Leguizamo indeed drunk while driving the van. He hit the brakes too hard. The sliding door on the van slammed into Bob Hoskins' finger and hurt him quite badly, and he had to wear a cast in most of the shots after that. That's how bad things were. Really disorganized. Of course, also, the director, during one particularly interesting moment, poured a cup of hot coffee over an extra to make them look dirtier. Can you imagine that?
Can you imagine that? I mean, you know, the extra sitting there thinking, it's pretty good, I've got a good part here, but at least I've got a part, I've got a break here. And the director says, this chap here, he needs to have me look dirtier. I don't really like that. Come here, you. He comes over there. He says, just take that. He throws his coffee all over him.
Scalding hot coffee.
Yeah, now get back out there in front of those cameras and carry on.
Get over there.
Can you imagine the extra, the morale?
I know.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. He stinks of coffee now. He's just dripping wet.
He's burning hot,
can you imagine?
Chap. Second-degree burns.
Bits of biscuit in there, just all over his top.
I know, it's awful.
No.
I mean, that wasn't even the worst thing that happened. Apparently, during filming, the directors were saying all kinds of rude and nasty things, and it got so bad, the staff started wearing shirts with the rude things they'd said on them. This was a really nasty work environment.
It most certainly was, and of course this reflected in the film, and in the final production. Of course, these sort of things come out; you can't hide them.
That's
even
right.
though in the background, it sort of comes out in the acting, etc., so forth.
And indeed, in the film itself, it ended up being a very embarrassed and awkward type of film that was almost embarrassed of itself. Really, they didn't really know, as I said, whether it was for kids or adults. The result of it was, of course, something that, although it's a film that some people do appreciate, it just was bad. That's the only way to describe it. It was bad. Now, what's more, something interesting here. Did you know originally they were going to cast Tom Hanks in the role of Mario, but he was dismissed due to at the time not being bankable enough. Now, of course, he went on to star in films like Forrest Gump, and he's probably very grateful he never appeared in the Mario movie, I should think.
I should imagine he is after that. Yes, indeed.
Yes. Now, Mr. Miyamoto said of the film, to give you an idea of how Nintendo reacted to this, he said, "It was a very fun project that they put a lot of effort into. The one thing that I still have some regrets about is that the movie may have tried to get a little too close to what the Mario Brothers video games were. And in that sense, it became a movie that was about a video game rather than being an entertaining movie in and of itself."
Yes, you see, so video games and films are two different things.
Yes.
So they've tried to say, let's try and make this about a video game with acting on the screen. But actually, really, they should have focused more on making it a film because that's what it was.
Right, right.
With obviously flavours of the game, you know it's about the game, we know it's backing is the game, but it's actually a film. So
Yes.
they're trying to make it like a video game. Of course, this didn't work.
No. They thought, of course, at the time that Mario had, seized the entire world with Mario Mania. So they thought they were putting Mario on soap bars, they're putting him on, sweeties, confectionery, anything you can think of, calculators, pocket watches, anything at all back then had Mario's face on it. So during this process of commercialization, they thought, well, why don't we make a movie? But of course, as you say there, they messed up because they tried to make this about a video game instead of being just a fun film. Now, Nintendo were burned badly by the experience of the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie, and they didn't go near movies again for nearly 30 years. The next live-action film they did was 2019's Detective Pikachu.
Yes, indeed. How did that go?
Well, Detective Pikachu actually did a lot better.
Yes.
It brought in over $400 million, I believe, at the box office. So obviously Nintendo have seen the success of Detective Pikachu. They've also seen the success of the Sonic movies. 2 Sonic movies have done extremely well, so perhaps finally, after 30 years, or nearly 30 years, and all that convincing, they're at last warming up to the idea of a new Super Mario movie.
Yes, indeed. Now, of course, they've got this background, this history in the background there.
Yes.
So that's the problem they've got to deal with. And of course, they've called this the Super Mario Brothers movie. This is a new one.
Yes.
The old one was called Super Mario Brothers, but it's almost like they're trying to say, look, let's disassociate ourselves with this one. This is the Super Mario. This is the one. This one here is the one.
Exactly. We're going to be replacing the old one. Forget that one in 1993. That doesn't exist. This is the Super Mario Brothers movie. But of course, they've got this curse or this shadow hanging over their film from back then. And whenever people think the Super Mario movie, a lot of them will still think of that one with Bob Hoskins in it. So it really is a bit of a problem. However, what I can say for Nintendo is they put an awful lot of effort into the new one. For starters, it's going to be fully animated this time instead of live action. So that's a major distinction that's really going to set it apart in people's minds. It has a star-studded cast of voice actors, as we said earlier, with Chris Pratt, etc. and so forth. And this time, it seems they're trying to make an entertaining movie in itself, as opposed to just a film about a video game.
Yes, now there's a very important point with what you said there. We just said about the game, a video game and a film being different.
Right.
See? Because, of course, there's not real characters that play in video games, if you know what I mean. Well, certainly not like Mario, you see. They're animated.
Right.
But what they've done here, they said, okay, let's not use actual actors like we did before, but let's actually use animations
Yes.
that look like the video game.
Yes.
Yeah? And let's see if we can actually get this across to the people like a video game in a film. Does it work? And I think, actually, yes, it will work.
Well, we've seen from the Sonic movies that approach does indeed work. Of course, this time it's going to be, as far as we know, fully 3D animated with not a single person to be seen or real person anywhere in the film.
Yes,
the first Sonic movie, of course, did have real people in it, but this time, this Mario movie won't at all. It's going to be like those old cutscenes, you may recall them, from Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, etc. and so forth, and I believe Mario Power Tennis. Back on the GameCube, they had these rather long introductory cutscenes that had animated scenes of the Mario gang doing various things. So this is kind of a similar principle, but on a blockbuster movie scale with, famous actors, etc. and so forth.
Yes, voicing, etc. And of course, I think cartoons work. People understand cartoons. Now, it's not a cartoon in that way because of animation, etc. But it's still like that, and people are used to that sort of format.
Right.
So I think this game, this film, movie, the Super Mario Brothers movie, I think it's got a jolly good chance of being a very popular movie.
If you ask me, I think this one has a very good chance indeed of escaping the old one's shadow. Now, if Nintendo can successfully pull this off, fellows, they will have achieved a massive business move, because they'll have been able to not only create a blockbuster movie to erase the memory of that bad old taste in their mouths from 1993, they'll also have brought themselves into the movie scene. So we might even begin to see more and more Nintendo movies in the future.
I think it's very possible. They'll obviously be monitoring this very, very carefully.
Oh, yes.
They want to know what they get at the box office, the response, the reviews. They'll be all over it. And then they'll base their decision on from there whether they go for it. But I think it's got a good chance.
Indeed, so this is really a monumental moment for Nintendo. They have to get this one right. If they can get it right, who knows where things can go from here. And personally, I very much hope they do get it right. I'm looking forward to watching the new Mario movie. What do you think, fellows? Let us know in the comments section. This has indeed been GameChap and Bertie, bringing you an interesting analysis of why the movie was cursed, but hopefully not anymore. We look forward to seeing you once more in the next exciting outing.
Oh, yes.
Until then...